ADHD does not mean the same thing for every ADHDer. Just like every minority group has been ringing the same "we are not a monolith" bell, it applies to complex mental health as well, kids. Hello, my name is Steven, the host of Attention Different, and this current ADHD adulting chat. I was diagnosed at the age of 10, and I am a producer and filmmaker.
I'm Adam Hagenboo. I'm an actor, and I was diagnosed, I think, when I was 5.
Whoa.
Hi, I'm Jenna. I'm an actor, producer, and business owner, and I was diagnosed at, I think, 13. Yeah.
My name's Matt McKenzie. I am a musician, creative producer, and I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in 4th or 5th grade, so...
9 or 10.
9 or 10.
And I'm Daniel Sheehan, I'm 31, and I was not actually diagnosed with ADHD, but when I was young, my family actually kept me out of school. I was homeschooled, because if I had been in school, they knew I would have been put on drugs, and they didn't want that. So they kept me away from it, and then I have kind of self-internalized how I deal with ADHD ever since.
Okay, so what's fascinating about everybody's age of diagnosis, and thank you for saying what age you're at now, actually, because that's important. It has been 31 years for you of undiagnosis, right? And everybody here very rarely was diagnosed at a young age, particularly you, my love, because the stats for women or femme, rarely are you diagnosed at 10 or at 13 or at 12. But even still, even for the guys, most folks, right? Male, female, they and them. ADHD is still a moving target for diagnosis. And I think it's because of the energies and presentations, and we'll get into all of them. Energy management is one's ability to discipline in, willingness to focus on and control energy in, energy out, right? Through various means, whether that's nutrition, diet, sleep, relationships to positive work, play, etc. It is an individual's ability and willingness to manage the input and output of energy. I was your roommate for 4 years.
Yeah.
Got to know each other very well at that delicious, chaotic, novelty-obsessed adolescence called college. And during that time, I know that we were not alone in this great game we call energy management. So we existed in a world that was hyper-competitive from the ground up, and I think it led to a lot of energy management, interesting things. Could you please tell the group where we got the nicknames Berries and Protein?
Yeah, when I would always buy this Odwalla, 32 grams of protein, disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
It was like liquefied
Green?
chalk. No, it was like the flesh tone one. Flesh tone chalk. Yeah. And it was just tons of protein, and every time I'd walk by, the guy would be like, "Protein!"
And what did I get?
Berries.
Strawberries. Yeah. I always got 2 packs of strawberries, and we would go from our from our dorm room to the theater school, and it was one walk. We would stop at Entropy, which for those fellow nerds, is the in the world of physics and in science, right? Entropy is heat energy, right? Which is what happens when you consume food. So we were called Berries and Protein, and this takes me back to sort of an adorable example of this, right? I was taking fresh, but let's call it fruit-based sugars, putting them in my body, pumping dopamine, right?
Yeah.
You were taking protein, restoring muscle, still working out and building. I think at that time, freshman year.
Yeah.
That was your form of energy management. Repair and restore.
Yeah.
Put this thing in my body, repair and restore the muscles, keep them there. I don't know. I'm curious. What did you feel at that time around all that protein? How did you feel you were managing your energy? Where was it working? Where wasn't it?
First of all, I had terrible insomnia always growing up. As an ADHD, I would taught myself multiple entire software programs by just staying up at night, After Effects, Photoshop.
Give me some hours, range of time we're talking.
I was supposed to go to bed at 10 p.m. and I would usually stay up until 3.
Whoa.
So 5 hours after my family was asleep, I would just be on a computer. And
how many nights strung together like that?
Maybe 4.
Until you would crack? Would there be a
cycle? Because on Fridays I would be doing something fun, and then Saturday, Sunday
sleep in.
yeah. So it was on school nights. It was on nights I had to,
Yeah.
And I'm just dreading the next day. So I always had terrible insomnia. So when I started exercising, I suddenly didn't, and I slept. So I'm like, oh, if I exercise, I'll sleep, and then if I sleep, I have energy.
Yeah.
So weirdly, I got energy back from exercising. But I think at the time I would have said, because you said what was the rationale? I would have said it's because I want to be an actor. Having I read Uta Hagen, having a good instrument. Didn't really understand what an instrument was at the time, but having I figured maybe having a shiny trumpet was better than having a patinaed one. And to me, being shiny was being incredibly jacked. Now, in retrospect, I would say it was very much a unconscious coping mechanism for dealing with basically mania, like a lot of internalized shame, which is a very ADHD thing. Shame about still as an actor, it's even more true now, not in college, that there's very little you can do to influence the outcome of your career or the outcome of your success. And so having a lot of extra energy, a lot of extra, cerebral thought about a thing, I wanted to have something I could do that I could be 100% all in and be like, there's my effort for my thing.
What a conundrum for a primate, an individual who is uniquely brain wired for perfection addiction, addiction to perfection.
Yes.
To be confronted with a paring down of all your opportunity into one and be like, well, I'm gonna put every ounce of my ADHD perfection into this one thing.
And you got about 6 of them per year.
Yeah, exactly.
I just had this moment where I remembered being in school, and I was just pounding Mountain Dew. All
Mountain Dew.
day.
I was thought you were gonna say coffee.
That's actually brand new news from Jenna.
Yeah, me too.
And of all of the caffeine-related beverages, somehow that's the most metal for you.
Yeah, it's
Oh my
super
God.
That's
That's
exactly
metal for
it's
Jenna.
really edgy.
What's funny to look back is that we were going we were just talking about 8 a.m. till 11
Sometimes
work hours, not
yeah.
including what would go on in
Crew or
terms of
rehearsal.
crew rehearsal and all the other stuff that you have to do to prepare. And I realized that I was I had so much coffee all day long. I dealt with insomnia as well. And I was just pounding Mountain Dew all the time, trying to get into a place to be able to sustain.
Yes.
High sugar and caffeine.
Just to sustain the
processed
back
energy.
to back to back to back to back to back to back.
Okay, what's the result? Do we remember how it feels? How do we feel?
Then I would
after
just
all
get
that?
home and I'd be like a skeleton staring at the
That.
ceiling, being
The mummy.
just
Yeah,
in constant high vibration because the energy felt good because it was aligning in what I needed to do. But then the moment it came to trying to shut that off, impossible.
Ooh, that seems so profound, and I haven't heard it that way either in a bit or ever. Which is the idea of the desperation that we all feel to, in essence, get the dopamine crew to row at the same time.
When the ADD is firing on all cylinders, it's this amazing. It's like a supercar,
It is.
right?
It's a Formula One car.
But I can't always be driving 150 miles an hour, and I will set my identity of myself at that point, and then be so disappointed when I'm working at any other gear other than that.
100%.
And it's that's not reasonable even for a supercar.
100%.
Nope.
So I'll often find myself being I don't have the energy to do said task, which is why I'll procrastinate on it endlessly, because I'll have the energy once I'm ambiguously with the energy that I need that I have when I'm at 100%.
Yeah.
And I'll never get there because I actually usually get that energy from having accomplished something.
When you ramp up to it, when you build up to it, hyper focus and flow state, right, Daniel? You get to it. I want to ask real quick, who in this group was medicated during the time we're talking about?
Oh, during college? I was not.
You were not.
I was not.
So there are 2 folks here who, one never medicated, one not medicated during college.
Right.
3 medicated during this time, right? That is significant to energy management at the time, okay?
Absolutely.
So finish homeschooling by junior year. When did the diagnosis come? Not.
I was never diagnosed.
But how did-
I was the most energetic person
Yeah.
any of us knew.
Yeah.
Even to this day, people will have memories of, oh my gosh, they talk about bouncing off the walls. I would literally do it. Not like a metaphor, I literally would bounce off of a wall and then go and run and grab a ball and then run and throw it against the wall and bounce off the wall and grab the ball. I had that much energy all the time. And now I'm the quietest one sitting here and I don't look like I have a ton of energy, but that's just because it's all here.
When did that transition happen and what
Yeah.
led to that transition?
It was going to a small Catholic school and not for one thing, there were people around, which was so exciting to me at the first point because I had been homeschooled and was like, oh my gosh, people. And so I was trying to be around them all the time.
Sounds like ball kid. That sounds like ball kid energy.
I was, yeah. But then realizing that people let you down.
Oh.
And then my brain going, okay, wait a minute, but what is the value in that? And then still needing all of that energy to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I diverted it into myself.
Oh, yeah.
Internalize that, yeah.
Debate champion was good. Because I know a little bit about Daniel. Daniel, for those watching, Daniel is a producing partner of mine, and we met in grad school at SC and produced a doc that spokespeople, go check it out, it's on Amazon Prime. We produced a bike doc together, and through that experience, that project, we learned about each other's ADHD, our neurodiversity, our brain type, the fact that we are the yin to each other's yang along the ADHD scale. Not all ADHD presents the same, and my God, does it not. Like, it's very, there's a scale. But we learned that about each other, and I learned a heck of a lot about your personal life, and I hope you learned about it on mine. I'm assuming I told you everything.
Stephen, you never stop talking. So yes, I heard.
How did that feel in your body when you were no longer expressing outward, but the same energy is happening? Like, did you feel a shift in your physicality in terms of being able to expel that energy versus keeping it in?
It's like my body became slower while my brain became faster.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if that's what you mean, like
Yeah.
physically, I would say that I went backwards. I'm like, I all of that, like, I could do anything. I could run anywhere. I would do long distance running, literally. I would play soccer, center mid, and now I don't do any of that because much of the physical energy isn't there anymore. I'm much more tired. But when I care about something, my brain takes over, which is where we get to the hyper-focus thing that I was talking about. And the brain runs the physicality. And that's what makes me successful, I think, at film. Because I care about the film, and or about like reasoning and arguments and why we do what we do. As soon as my brain kicks in, the physical body like reacts with all the energy that I don't have any other time. So it's like my brain controls me so that half the time I'm just turned off, and then half the time I'm in full on.
Totally.
You said when people let you down. And
I was interested by that too.
Yeah, you went internal. It sounds like there was a pivot. It sounds like there was an epiphany or a pivot or a plate shift when you got to high school. And if it's not something physical that you can remember, do you remember a moment outside of the let you down, like that? How did energy management change? Sodas, nutrition, exercise. How did it shift during that tumultuous time where your brain started to speed up?
Well, I became much more reliant on caffeine, for sure. And I think that sounds like something that all of us kind of do.
It's such a through line,
But in terms of when I first started noticing people would let me down, it was because I cared so much about movies, and that's the reason you and I met at film school, because movies are emotion, and I liked creating emotion. I wanted to be part of that. So there's the logical brain side that wants to have value, and the emotional side, which is what I'm trying to get to, and the emotional side is what I care about. And because I care about it, that's when I get the hyperfocus. So during undergrad, we would make films, and I realized I couldn't do it on my own. You need a team to make films. And I would be the one with the hyperfocus. I'd be the one who wanted to get it done, and nobody else on my team cared that much. And with this thing that I was so emphatically desiring to get done, needing them and them not being able to do it or not caring enough crushed my faith in them. And forced me to like reconsider my, like, where can I get energy from that won't let me down?
Ooh, fascinating and really important to happen when you're young. Where does the energy come from? Very yogi, very woo-woo. It comes from inside.
And part of the reason that I'm not medicated is because I actually kind of like the way that my brain works.
Totally.
That's why I stopped taking medication.
Yeah?
I was in a similar sense, like had ADHD as a kid, was diagnosed, was like teachers checking in with my parents, that whole thing. But it never seemed like I knew what was going on until I was 23 in grad school with Tonti. And I remember telling you about this at the time. I don't think I want to take meds anymore because I don't even know like what this whole thing is. And then I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
but
it's
it
good.
started to like make me think of a term that I was introduced to by my therapist a few years ago, which really changed my way of thinking and energy and emotions, which was rejection sensitivity
RSD,
dysphoria.
baby.
Oh yes.
And like the idea of someone letting you down in whatever context, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is that it could be completely made up, or it could be how I perceived something as it let me down. But that was an energy killer and still is today.
Oh, yeah.
But now I just have to like tell myself what is real and what's not. So much of it's not real. So much of it's like that the empathetic side, the creative side of your brain that you're really trying to like connect with someone on. It could be that they're just not interested. But in my brain, that's like, you don't like this thing that is the most important thing to me, that all of a sudden I can go into quiet mode,
Totally.
internalize. And it can get real bad, and it can be like 5 hours of not talking to anyone, or like I'll try and watch something that I like, or use my hands in a way that I like that gets me into hyper-focus, which gets the energy back. But if you interrupt me out of that, once I've already like had a day of 6 hours of like trying to get normal, and then I get interrupted from the hyperfocus, it could kill the energy again.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna do that nasty mentor thing, but because I'm gonna grow to be a nasty mentor. You did something contradictory, which is so exciting.
Cool.
At the very end, you said I want to get to normal, but at the very beginning, you said I don't want to take meds because I like my brain.
Good point.
Cool.
Why is that?
That duality is so...
Well, I think it's closely related to the rejection
Yeah.
sensitivity and closely related to the imposter syndrome
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
What about your energy makes you feel abnormal, but what about your energy makes you feel superpowered? Because those
Great
two things
question.
don't make sense to me.
my energy that makes me feel superpowered is exactly what we're doing here today, which is like, and when you talk, especially Stephen, like I learned from your energy and how like you just let the energy come out, and you even touch upon that voice that tells you like, am I talking too much? Am I saying too much? Like, that's the other side of it. That's the part that makes you feel not normal, is questioning like, can I be this way? And I think that just, the more ADHD aware people I'm around, whether they have it or not, makes it easier to just like, whatever my current energy is, it's okay what it is. That's the hardest thing to like remember, is it's okay if it's not there.
Yeah.
And it's okay if it's like so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that like fully answers your question.
It's an answer, and I
Yeah.
asked a question.
Sure.
I have lots of things to say about all of it.
I also think the duality thing is really interesting to me, or at least what like resonates with me, is that there's those two sides of the coin of like, I really love how my brain works. In enough practice in being an adult, I understand that it's not always at home in places. So even whether or not how I feel about it intrinsically, which is like I love this aspect of myself, I also understand that it might not be accepted in certain situations. So I feel like it kind of has to do with masking in a way. Like, I love that about me, but it's not going to be successful in this environment. So like I have to sort of pull it back. Maybe it's because I'm an actor, so I'm used to being watched. I'm used to understing how I'm being perceived actively
And
within
you
a
code
moment.
switch for your job.
Like
some
I'm,
sense,
I think,
right?
especially if you've been an
Naturally,
actor, you've gotten a third eye on yourself a lot more
Oh,
often.
yeah,
so
yeah,
you're
yeah.
just very used to how you're being perceived, how you're being taken in. Maybe this is also a female thing. I don't know, but like I'm much more aware of
As
that.
a non-female, I would like to vote probably.
Yeah. So like I think it's more that it's, like, taking the talking too much thing. So I'm always constantly thinking that all the time in my head. However, I like when I'm in an environment where that's received and understood for what it is. And when I'm bouncing with other ADD people, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and we get to dive in and be excited about this. But if I am in another environment where I'm realizing that that's not really socially acceptable, though I love that about myself, I don't do it.
When do you know, and what is it that makes you know that your energy is the asshole in the room or whatever? Like what? Like, you know what I mean?
I'll
like,
show you. Let's say I'm talking about Tupperware, and then you go ahead and start talking about something. So the Tupperware was really
Anyway,
great.
yeah, I was on this flight.
It was really great for me to be able to. That will make me not want to interact at all.
Oh, if someone does that to
If they
you.
let me know that jumping in, that me adding, that my internal
To me, I
monologue
go
that's
straight to
going doesn't
RSD
fit with
in
their
that
thing,
sense.
I'm like,
Oh, I'm out.
and
I won't
will,
talk again.
Literally interrupting him in the middle of him.
I know, right? Literally,
Yeah. And I'm like, great. Yeah. And I'm like,
accepted here. We all know.
and what, because
yeah.
what I love about ADHD people, I think my favorite thing is we will talk over each other and we can actually hear
Yes,
it.
we can.
And then
That's a real
and then,
thing.
Oh,
and then
I hear everything.
what will
Your
happen,
tab
what
is
I
up.
love is it's like the Hegelian dialectic in real time, because you'll be like, that's actually more interesting than what I'm talking about, I'll shut up.
Yes, even there's a
Yeah.
secondary layer. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
or
You'll
they've
hear
gotten
the company go, "Oh, wait, no,
to
she
what
said it,
you're
wait,
talking
Blair."
about before you finished, and you're like, this is great, I don't even have to finish my story.
I feel so much better.
They already know what I'm talking about.
I also love it. I love it because it's a sign of endearment. I don't
Yes.
know. And
It
maybe
is. It's
this was
100%
also
endearment.
something I learned after drama school, and this I wonder if this resonates with you
Wait,
guys.
because we got this one devastating.
Yeah, is that like I think I learned this. There was like a hard hit after drama school because when I was in drama school, I was with a bunch of actors where I think in that environment, people tend to like offer their feelings up. By nature of that. Like when I sit
Yes,
down,
and.
I'll be like, hey, I'm feeling this way. And I'm used to people being like, oh my God, yes, and this.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
people
yeah.
just do this. And then I realized that a lot of people
Don't do that.
Don't offer, like they don't join in. It's not like if
Hell
you
yeah.
offer something, it's an offering for them to join in the conversation.
Hell yeah.
So I've been in the place where I'm like, I'm just riffing. And also I take when people interrupt that they're excited. They want to like come in and come join me in this. And then I'll be like, oh, they're not, shit.
Oh, wait, expand on that. Wait, have you had the sensation that I've so many times where, yes, when a non-ADHD or a non-interrupty person
Yeah.
it says something and interrupts you, right? Like you're in a train of thought and you go,
Yes.
and then they go, oh no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and I'm like,
And then I'm like, wait, don't do that. Now you killed the momentum.
yeah, yeah.
Now you killed the momentum. If you had just fucking interrupted me and gone with it, I would have taken the thing. Now the energy's gone. Yeah.
Oh, how many times in general have you had that? Like, just in general, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but when you're just like, well, never mind, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yes.
And it feels
Yes.
inherently ADHD. Like, I either want to cry or I want to punch through a wall, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know why, but
yeah.
I'm not telling you the story about the thing you didn't care about.
Oh,
and I could
oh,
tell
oh.
10 seconds in.
Yeah. How do you know? But how do you know? How can you tell?
Body language. I know
Adam
you want
gave us
specifics,
this to keep
but
talking. Well, no,
yeah,
well,
like,
he gave us this to like be interrupted.
I would say
Different body language. Like, how do you know someone's just like disinterested?
if they ask a question that's unrelated to the point I'm on my way to make, or if they like, honestly,
Say it.
ask a stupid fucking question, or like say a stupid fucking unrelated thing.
I've tried now to adapt into the I'm sorry I interrupted thing that I'll add in because I'll be doing this with someone and someone will be like, oh, I'm sorry I interrupted to me, and then I'll be like, oh shit, they're apologizing for interrupting me.
I didn't do that.
And I was interrupting. And then I'll be like, oh my God, you bitch. Like they're aware of what interrupting means and you've been interrupting and you didn't apologize for it. And then I'll be like, oh my God, I should never
I
speak
had that
again.
yesterday when someone opened the door, and I didn't say and for the record, it was Talia and Benj and I, and Talia opened the door, and Benj came in first, and Benj goes, or no, Benj, you open the door, and Talia, I go in first, Talia goes in second. I didn't say thank you, Benj, and Talia, being my sister, goes, thank you.
Oh, and you
Benj."
thought it was
No.
Steven doesn't know how to say
Oh, it was
thank
that.
you.
No, because we've known each other too long,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there just like, thanks, Benj. And like, I'm gonna sit on this for the rest of the fucking night that I'm
Yeah.
a horrible, awful human
Can't
and
wait
say
to
thank
unpack
you.
this for 3 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And Talia knew, you knew. But yes, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got handout, interrupt. We've got stupid
Something-
fucking question.
anything that's
for
gonna
the-
distract-
I have a more brutal one from my friends, from people who've known me for 20 years. They will just change the subject.
Oh God.
I have close friends who I love enough that it's okay. It's my friend found out he was ADHD. He got his diagnosis a year ago, so this is kind of a bad example. But before that diagnosis, as my friend, his technique was to just change the subject about something he was interested in. The irony being, he's also ADHD, but that function, I remember just being like, okay, I guess I'm done. I guess I'm done. I guess my story was over that at that point. Yeah.
It's usually the other way around for me. It's me not vibing with them.
Somehow this doesn't surprise me after your first introduction.
No, it's because I go through intense moments of focus, and then in the literal next moment, completely check out. And then my connection with whoever I'm talking with, they don't know what to do with that.
When someone calls out my ADHD in this moment, what for whatever it is, when someone manipulates or weaponizes the fact that I have ADHD,
Weaponize.
I weaponize it against
Thank you for bringing
myself.
the word in.
I can say
That's
it.
when I get outward.
Okay.
And I almost get like very overwhelmed as a 29-year-old man who's about to cry in front of
Hell yeah.
his friends because I'm so hurt by all he did was say like, I think the word that was used was Mr. ADHD. And that
would
made
trigger
me
me.
go, "You're an alcoholic." Oh! So like, I mean, it really pulled out. Being with musicians, the people
Classic.
I hang out with, everyone's real as fuck.
Oh, yeah,
and if I
classic.
told my guys that I, talk shit about them, they would be like, "Let's go." So,
Well, yeah, no, it's
which
music,
is what
music.
makes me go, okay, they're neurodivergent in however way they are. I think this particular guy is somewhere on the spectrum, might have some ADHD too. The rest of us all have ADHD. So we're very real with each other, and we can go through these things and like talk about them after. But that's what happened is speaking of internalizing something, and what makes the switch for me to project or to go back into flight or fight. And I don't like that. It's like the lowest I feel is when I feel flight or fight again.
So I remember the first time that a contemporary, an adult friend of mine at that time said in a mean way, ADHD statement, I'll give you the statement, right? All the way up to that, it had been playful, like, "God, Steven, could you shut the fuck up?" It was your homies, right? We rib each other evenly, so it's equal. Everyone has their thing.
There's a flow.
This was the first time where it was a friend who said, "You're the asshole in the room." I was in a group of about 7 guy friends in high school. We're still friends today. There were 3 ladies, and they were the lady friends of the 8 guy friends. Okay, so I was born in Louisiana but raised in Texas, and one of the more time-honored, actually, Adam will remember coming to the same place. Remember the Christmas tree lights in Turtle Creek and Highland Park, and
yeah.
so like Highland Park's like the Beverly Hills of Dallas, and people just go nuts with Christmas tree lights, right? Full trees, full live oaks, lit up top to bottom, gorgeous stuff. It's a lovely night out and we'd all gone to college, freshmen, sophomores in college, home for the holidays. And this is the crew, this is the high school crew. So the context is fun,
Yeah.
right?
Playful, carefree.
Playful,
Yeah.
excited, Christmas lights. I mean, like if there's an environment for an ADHD to be the poster child of that party, it's the Christmas tree light caravan. Like that's our zone. I am ready for it until halfway through the ride, in the middle of me talking about this thing and that thing, and I want to be really clear. There were some people in the car who were laughing with me.
Yeah.
There was one person in the car who was not laughing at all. And this person, at a certain point in the middle of my reverie, turned around and she goes, "Jesus Christ, could you just take your fucking meds and shut the fuck up?"
Whoa.
Holy moly.
Now, that's a not cool way to tell somebody that their energy is a little much.
Yeah.
In relationship land, it caused a rupture in my relationship to myself and to this person simultaneously. And I went quiet
Yeah.
for the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for
The
sure.
childhood med takers, raise of hands, who was told that by family, parents.
Take
Take
your
your
fucking meds.
meds.
Oh yeah.
Take your meds.
So this to me is a different brand of that thing you hear when you're a kid,
Yes.
such that now at 33, if I get someone going, right?
Yeah.
Shush, stop interrupting. Or if I get somebody change subject, all of those go back to that car.
In the
ride.
car.
Yeah.
So we've shifted from energy management. Now we're talking about within relationships to ourselves and to others. What about ADHD as an inconsistency disorder rather than a disorder of brain function, et cetera? How does that affect your relationship to yourself and to others? ADHD being an inconsistency disorder.
Oh, I mean, see, I would say I highly identify with the inconsistency in the relationship with self, which I think is, when you build that trust with yourself, right? It's I make plans, I'm going to go do that plan, and when I don't complete it, it's like I've betrayed myself.
Yep.
Whether that's subconscious or otherwise, you are breaking trust within yourself that becomes that gains momentum and snowballs in so many different ways. And I think that really hit after college, because when we were in such a structured environment,
Yes.
which
One in which people were so emotion, like, I feel this, I feel
I also
that.
had an outlet all the time, and I was put in a really heavy regulated structure that also tied right into my hyperfixation, which was
Yes.
acting and performing. Therefore, it didn't really go, things transitioned rather seamlessly, and I was put into an environment where I could excel within that hyperfixation. And the moment I left college and I had no structure or anything, I was like, why do I not feel motivated? Like, what's happening to my body? Because now that I'm left without a structure, I'm now just feeling like, where's that woman that could do all of that and I can't anymore, who am I anymore? Am I that type A person? Am I this person that can accomplish a lot of stuff? Why don't I have what's wrong with me that I can't do this and that I set my eggs in one basket of who I was? But when I'm on my own trying to do something without understanding what's going on, I'm just thinking that I'm failing.
Totally.
Personally.
So those internal thoughts echoed by external people or things?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Is it solely in here,
Sure.
or does it get confirmation outside?
I think you get confirmation by comparison. Outwardly, I think how that maybe manifests is that I tend to create status when I meet people where they're higher than me and I'm below.
You take the bottom.
So I'll be like, that's where
Subtle
mine
behavior.
would. That's where mine would maybe come out, is establishing status in a room and assuming that I am.
And now that I know this, I get to empower you in the right circle, because if I see Jenna starting to get small, I'm like, bitch, shut
Yeah.
up.
So I'll just recede.
For me, is like when I'm not contributing anymore, I get very self-conscious, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, what's that? I don't know if you guys experience that, what that feels like.
I experience it with movies all the time. Like even not too long ago when someone said Face Off. Like now the cat's out of the bag, like you said. Like
Fantastic film.
Oh, yeah.
30 minutes in a room with ADHD, like, hey, the wall's down.
100%.
I've not seen it. I don't know anyone in it.
Yeah.
Like, I do wish I've seen it. I wish I could contribute, but like the truth is, I have no fucking idea. And that happens with movies all the time. And as
too.
someone who went to film school, I feel like so worthless when I can't relate. I will lie.
You mean like someone who got a map? You mean like,
yeah,
oh
yeah.
yeah, what?
FOMO
Yeah.
for ADHD is crazy.
So real.
I watch so many movies so that I can have checked them off. Not because I'm going to enjoy them,
100%.
but just
you don't have to
because,
lie.
yes, just because I feel like I've done something wrong if I haven't seen it.
Could you say it again for the cheap seats? Yeah, no.
$2
FOMO,
seat.
FOMO. What have I heard? What is the new one? There's a new one that is for the no people, for the people who say no.
No.
Fear
Like
of missing out versus the fear of there's a new one for the joy of no. It's the fear the fear of being forced to go, right? Like the
Okay.
fear of committing.
Oh,
like there's a
yeah.
new like millennials sort of like we love when our friends cancel on us and we get our time back. There's
Yeah.
a new inverse of
Yes.
FOMO that I've been trying to use, and of course I'm not often.
There's a stress that comes in with the thought of people judging you. And then the brain goes into hyperfocus or hyperactivity. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not hyperfocus is wrong here. It's hyperactivity would be the thing that is going on. And you're having this internal monologue. Oh my God, do they hate me? Oh my God, what are they thinking about me?
It's almost like the opposite of hyperfocus for me.
Yeah.
It's so hyper diffused. that I'm like,
ADHD,
if I could just
anxiety.
hold on to one thought for a second, maybe I could solve it. But instead I'm thinking about like, how do I look? How do I sound? What was the last thing they talked about? What was the last movie they mentioned? Who are
And
three
I'm an
actors from
idiot.
it so I can maybe bring up a different movie if we're talking about the movie example.
Movies or music or
Yeah.
fashion or whatever particular topic it is, I feel like I have to know about it.
Yes.
Philosophy or wherever I'm going, I have to know about it. Otherwise, if someone brings it up, they'll hate me.
This is that's
That's
an
real,
interesting
though.
thing I've noticed recently. I was traveling a lot, and I noticed I was bringing like an unbelievable amount of entertainment devices. It was like I have to have my Nintendo Switch so I can play with my nephew. I have to have my laptop. I have to have my PC in case my Mac doesn't work. It was almost like that, like the FOMO thing, but like for myself, because these were all things I use in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting thing. Like I'm afraid I'm not. It's just a fear of not being enough.
There is so much value that I feel like I can bring to things that I care about and to people when I care about them. And that's almost like a superpower. And I'm fully aware that that's going to come with abnormalities. I know that I'm somewhat different in a lot of ways. I get like super nervous in a crowd of people, so I don't want to be around people. I'm often tired when I'm around them. But when I commit to them, it's usually only a small group of people who I'm willing to actually give my energy to those people. But when I do, they can be very rewarding relationships.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's pros and cons. And I think that my relationships are much less than I would have otherwise. But the ones that I do allow myself to have are much stronger.
This is a form of not coping, but a form of self-scaffolding, right? Like building your own scaffolding, your own boundaries.
Oh, 100%, I do that.
Boundary setting, yeah, boundary setting, right?
Yeah.
So Daniel's boundary setting, and this actually will bring me all the way back to a thing that I wanted to say before. There's a priority matrix that I created in the priority matrix of introverts and extroverts. Introverted, introvert, extroverted, extrovert, or a blend, right? And you can kind of be nuanced about which one you lean on. Here's the point of it bringing it up. It's both energy management and relational, right? What the priority matrix teaches you about yourself, if you like analyze it and glom onto one of them, is the question you must ask is, where do I get the greatest amount of dependable battery recharge? Okay? Because you might get dependable battery recharge from a thing that you don't like doing a lot, right? But where do you get the most consistent or dependable battery recharge? I'm an extroverted extrovert. I get the most consistent and the most quantity of battery recharge from others. Okay? It takes more work and more discipline for me to get dependable battery recharge alone. Okay? Another way to put this is I will expend more energy than I'm getting back alone.
Interesting.
Right? I will expend less energy than I'm getting back when socializing.
That's extrovert, extrovert?
Extroverted extrovert.
Yeah, that's me too.
Okay, extroverted extrovert.
Yeah.
Oh, introvert, 100%.
Introvert.
Oh, yeah.
Am I hearing you correctly then? In an extroverted setting, your battery is draining faster than you can recharge.
Yes. That's why I have to give myself to them if I'm willing to actually go and be around people. It's work.
And it affects your relationships how?
That's why I was saying, like, I have to choose them. I can't just have a million different relationships because I don't have that much energy. I have to, obviously we're a social animal, so we want to be around people, but I have to pick the ones who I'm willing to give that to.
And what a wonderful observation that bears repeating, right? ADHD does not mean the same thing for every ADHDer. Just like every minority group has been ringing the same "we are not a monolith" bell, it applies to complex mental health as well, kids. So like Daniel and I both have the same condition. Daniel, would you say that I am anywhere near an introvert?
No.
Okay. So would you say that I get my greatest battery recharge from being alone?
No,
Okay.
you are the person who, it's funny because we think, a lot of our
lot
thoughts
alike,
are
yeah.
very similar.
Oh, yeah.
And yet we manifest that differently to the world. The exact opposite way.
The exact opposite. And I love that about you and working with you and relating to you, right? Because this is somebody who I, in a moment in a car, go, oh my God, we think the same shit. And then outside the car, be like, wow, we are so different as a person. And that is how it should be. That's great. So now shifting back over here, introvert, extrovert, priority matrix.
Honestly, it's interesting because I feel like it's shifted a bit. I am at a loss between introverted extrovert or extroverted introvert, to be honest.
I played this game
I think that they switch back and forth. I've become a lot more aware of when I need to be cocooned and I need to charge, where it's not something that I probably paid attention to, or I just rode right through most of the time. Whereas now I've gotten so much better just in knowing myself and doing a lot of that kind of work to be like, oh, you need you time now. Which I think I would override a lot of my instincts so much of the time, whether it's people pleasing, whether it's to like, or FOMO, whether it's to like, just override it to want to be able to be on and be in that. Yeah. Whereas now I've gotten to a place where I'm like, I definitely get my energy around other people. I think it's really, really important for me to be around other people. I think I am, with my ADD, it manifests a lot in looping, in like inner analyzing, not being able to get that to stop. And when I'm around other people, I'm able to mirror and self-regulate and co-regulate in such a stronger way.
That almost got me emotional.
That often,
I haven't said it like that before.
So like oftentimes when I'm alone,
actually.
when I'm alone, which is great, if I'm there too long, the internal monologuing, the narrator that's inside, she takes over. Whereas, and then I'll go out and I'll interact with someone and all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, I feel normal again.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a balance. I mean, even when I look back in college, I would work in the lobby of Purnell, which was like our college building. Not necessarily talking to any other people, but I would sit at that table and just, and it was
a body doubling
that,
moment.
All the time.
Sometimes body doubling, what you would refer to as an accountability buddy, and that is meeting with a friend who you're going to do homework with while on Zoom, but now they're talking to each other. That's accountability buddy. At the lobby, replace it with a dive bar. I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I want noise. I want people engaged. I want people exchanging ideas, and that energy gives me energy, and more energy gives more focus and determination, right? So discipline.
I'm very introverted. I get a lot of energy from being by myself. I have an extroverted component, which is basically that I'm a performer, but the problem is I'm so vain and so terribly desirous of all. I remember this distinct. I actually told somebody about this story recently. about how when we were in college, I would go to almost none of the parties. And I'd be like, I don't really want to drink and I don't really want to do this. But at one point I remember telling you, I don't know if you remember this, that I was like, you were like, are you going to go to this thing? It's that everybody's going. And I was like, who's the star? You know? I was literally like, unless I get hammered or fuck 2 girls in the same night, I don't win, right?
Why?
there's no way to win. Right? There's no way to like right? Like, I mean that because at Purnell, like the next day, I'd be like, did you hear so-and-so hooked up?
Oh, yeah.
And they were like the star. Or did you hear so-and-so got so drunk they had to go to get an IV? Again, the star. And then once I'm in that sort of mode, then it's like I have like an unlimited amount of energy. I'll usually be the person who's like, let's stay up, let's go another place, let's keep going.
But I don't want to extrapolate like too much of a copy paste. But is what you're functionally saying that when you feel like the star of that play, of that scene, of whatever, then it's like exponential, unending, like unlimited power, untapped power.
And I'm like hyper. It's like a goal-oriented extrovertedness, because once the audience
is there,
whatever they are, disappears.
Going.
There's no longer any performance.
Well, I relate to that a lot actually, because I think both you and I are the more introverted ones, and when I feel like I'm creating something of value, like I've talked about, like films or photography, I have no difficulty coming out and doing that sort of event.
Yes.
Because it matters to me. I'm getting energy from myself and from the event itself, and in the same way that you're getting it from acting or from performing and being the star. That's when I talk about like hyper-focus. Because I'm going to get energy from that, I'm totally willing to zero in on it and do it. And it doesn't matter that I'm an introvert. I can go be around millions of people. It doesn't matter. I'm doing the thing that I'm going to get energy from.
Yeah.
So energy management, you manage it well, you have the energy to relate to yourself and others. If you have the energy to properly and healthily relate to yourself and others, we usually develop a pretty healthy theory of mind, a pretty healthy idea of ourselves, a pretty healthy identity. I am the kind of person who has healthy relationships with myself and others because I am the kind of person who manages my energy well, right? So getting us all the way down to identity, I am the person who, I am the person that, I am the person which. There is this debate about I am versus I have. I will be very clear that from the very get, I consider myself someone who is. I am ADHD. I have said very little elsewise. And I've heard all the different versions. I'm a person with, I am a person who presents, I'm a person, truly, any variation grammatically in the English language that says I'm a person with a thing, right? I've heard it. I used the specific one, I am ADHD. I cemented this and ended my pursuit when I asked a mentor of mine after his lecture, what do you say? And he said, oh my gosh, I haven't been asked this question yet at the ADHD conference, in a way that it seemed like he'd been waiting for it for a while. And he said, I am. And I turned to my mom and I was like, it's done, I'm gonna stick to that one, right? I have heard other folks who very seriously attach to this or that, this other, this or the, this A, B, this or the other. And in the opposite arena, on the opposite side of the scale, they say, no, I am not my ADHD. I am Sarah, for instance, and my ADHD is this thing I deal with, this thing I have, right? I personally, Stephen, believe that if you take the ADHD away from me, I no longer am Stephen who has been on this planet for 32 years. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you take ADHD away from my brain and leave me.
Yes.
I don't think that exists, personally. So I want to go around the room on that I am versus I have. You've heard the other sides of the debate. Person A says, I have because I don't want to be defined by this thing. I say, I functionally can't imagine a world in which you take my ADHD away and I'm the same person. Aaron.
Fight.
Fight! Yeah, man! Fight!
Here's where I would go with that, though. I'm tentative. I personally think it's just a part of who I am, and that's been my journey of self-acceptance and self-acknowledgement. And you grow up with something that is taught to you, usually as a disorder. The journey to self-acceptance is already a challenging one.
Yeah.
In general, I'd like to think.
Yeah.
So I, it's not that I'm avoiding the distinction, but yes, personally, I think I am. That's who I am. That's how my brain works. It's a lot of things that I love about myself. But I always feel like the journey to self-acceptance with ADD is such a challenging one that I'm gentle with that, because isn't that a beautiful thing on how people decide they want to be.
Yes, and to your point, the journey may result in I have.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The end of that journey isn't also what we think necessarily. For that person, the end of that journey might be getting to I have.
knows?
Right. Like I think of the Carl Jung quote, people are not what they say they are what they do. And so that would be very hard for me to say, I would say I want to believe that I am. And that I think that that's probably a healthier way of thinking, but that I, in actual point of fact, am an I have. Generally, I act as though I have some disease that I need to compensate for that causes me an enormous amount of distress that I don't like. Which also goes to the point that I often, like I said earlier, I often set my hyper-focus or hyperactive ADHD as the norm and don't appreciate that that's like a gift. This sounds probably rather pretentious. I'm trying to say it more like, I guess if you're saying like I have, I'd like to be like I receive. Like this is a thing.
Oh, dear
Been
God, that
given.
doesn't sound pretentious at all. That
Do you know
sounds
what
so
I'm-
lovely.
like
I
that
have
live in
never,
this
I have
burden.
never once in my God. This is why I love you, motherfuckers. Artists. The artists
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
ADHD
yeah.
world. Sorry, sorry to the non-artist ADHDers. I love you so much too, but for different reasons. I love this moment in the artist ADHD world because, honey, I've never heard someone say that. I have never heard someone say versus I am versus I have, and then go, no, I receive it.
Yeah.
I receive the stimuli. I receive the outside reception of me.
Yeah,
I received my definition.
Yes.
That is so fucking Jungian and yogic.
Because it's like what you were saying about being more gentle.
It's
It's
ego
like
death.
when it's really not how I want it to be, which is the ego, right? Ego totally being like, this is not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but it is. This
But it
is
is.
how it is. So I have to receive it. And then equally,
Just as much as someone responded
when
to.
it's
It's not what I want, but it is.
My instantaneous experience, I will always be disappointed. Right? So I have to go, this is just a moment of me I'm receiving in a very strong flavor. And I'll get a different flavor tomorrow.
Yeah.
God, paint me by numbers. Paint me.
Paint me by numbers?
Paint me by numbers. Paint me by numbers, Adam. I just love the idea.
That's
of
good.
I'm
This could be the new line in
receiving-
Titanic.
I bet it's a portmanteau of two different lines from different movies. Paint me by numbers, you French girl. That is poetry in motion. I am receiving a part of myself with extra juice. I'm receiving a part of myself in this moment, and as a host
Witness.
to this energy, as a witness to this energy, I'm going to receive this guest
Yes.
who just entered my party, my
Yes.
house
Yeah,
party.
yeah.
I am not going to kick them out of the party.
Yes.
I am going to deal with them in the context of this party.
My wife is a pediatrician. She's in residency. She works with a lot of children with ADHD, which, speaking of relationships, is like been the most amazing thing to be with someone who understands.
Doesn't that sound right?
And in
Yeah,
our
bet.
relationship, there's
Bet.
like a before and after too
Yeah.
with medication. Like when I met her, I was in college. There's so much stimulation and structure and dopamine that like she was probably my crazy boyfriend or something like that. Then it was no structure, especially after grad school when I was like I have to figure out how to fill my time. Did she start to understand like he's that kind of ADHD or whatever. And I think that going back on medication would help me like realize that about myself, that I am ADHD. And the reason why I bring her up is because she always says something like, people that have a deficiency, a chemical imbalance, or a neurodivergency, or whatever, even if it's like mental abuse or physical abuse, whatever it is that you've like gone through, that some people just need medication to make them who they fully are. And I think that kind of changed my perspective on it as well. Now as living without it, I'm like, well, now I don't know again, so I guess I'll try it out again.
I also think that's like such an amazing thing to explore. I don't know, it resonates with me and it brings up a lot of like very, as I said, very nourishing thoughts, because I've had an experience where I'd been off my meds for a while, and because I just didn't have it, and I was traveling, and I was with an ex-partner who is wonderful, all good stuff, but he happened to have Adderall that was my milligram, and I'll never forget this moment. I was in the apartment and we had work to do, and he lent me one, And I remember it was like the Mario, and I suddenly was like around the apartment, like getting everything done, being like, what's going on? And he was like,
Was it day one? That was day one Adderall?
yeah, I got back
First
on
up.
it first back time and kicked into gear a little bit, to the point where he was like, whoa, are you all right? I was like, oh no, I'm just like activated and able to get a lot of stuff done. And it was in that space between the before and the after where I get to really notice the difference of when I have that assist. But when it comes to your identity, it is something that I think is a very rare experience.
To say I am would mean it is a state of being. Like, for instance, I am Daniel. I am white. I am Irish. It's my heritage. To say that I have would mean that it is a changeable state. Like, for instance, I have opinions. And I don't think that ADHD is necessarily a bad thing. It can have negative consequences, but it also can have positive effects. It also is controllable. Each of the people here are choosing or not choosing to get medicated at different times. We also all create mental processes to help ourselves function. And in that sense, I don't think that ADHD is an innate thing that we cannot do anything about. I think it is a controllable, changeable thing with positives and negatives. And thus, I would say that I have it, and I don't mind that.
Living in our current world, where when ADD is brought into the equation of the identity of self, there's so many other layers on top of it of like how you handle your ADD might also be tied with how you were treated because of it.
Oh yeah, totally,
like through your life.
totally.
So the level of like self-acceptance and whether it's something you own or not own is so inherently tied to with how it's been approached in your life. Is it something that you need to fix to be accepted? Is it something? There's so many different things, down to even if we really want to get meta about it, being like, well, what I like how I am with it, but the way society is structured, those things directly conflict with each other, which causes you to then have to have an opinion about how it manifests in your life because you have to experience our society and how those things interact. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yes.
to you guys.
It's hard to see one without the other.
Yeah. They're
Fully
sort of tied
accepting the
together.
other.
I want to round this out by honoring your point of semantics, honestly, earlier, Jenna, your point of semantics and your point of showing us how we can use I have or I am with a variation that does change the debate, right? As a debate champion would do.
Well, it doesn't have to be about debate. It's more about, and
Oh,
to,
yes,
to,
no,
to her
appreciate
point,
that,
I think
yeah.
it's more about the question of if it's an inherently bad thing.
Yeah.
If it's an inherently bad thing, that changes the terminology of have or am. But if you don't see it as a bad thing, then it's just, do I want to just say, hey, this is something I have?
Right. Now, and I will add to the if it's not a bad thing, the other side of I am. Because while you were speaking, quite frankly, same exact definition, but with the semantic word replacement. I would say instead of the truly, I would say I am ADHD on meds. I am ADHD today off meds.
Sure.
Right? Like this is my ADHD self on meds. This is my ADHD self off meds. Right? And this is how my ADHD self is different in context A and context B. Because what we're all kind of saying, which I fundamentally believe and is irrefutable in my opinion, is that personality is fluid, not fixed. Right?
Which
So-
would mean that in that sense, am and have mean the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly, right? They mean nothing. But how fascinating that in a room full of 1,200 ADHDers, it really means something. Like it means something worth debating, which I love to spin it on its head like that, right? It doesn't have to be a debate. It's a question of self-love and and confidence and how that informs the use of the word.
But to have that many ADD people in one room getting very attached to wanting to have a debate or a dialogue about this just shows how much when you have ADD in the world that you're so used to either having to defend or explain
Yes.
like your relationship with your
my God,
identity
yes,
and reckoning
yes,
with other
yes.
people's
That's why
input
it's so
on
important
something that's been
to
labeled
us.
to you
Yeah. Yes.
is something that you've been having to do for so long.
For everything. See, the first thing I said to you today was, you said, what am I doing after this? And I said, I'm going to buy a motorcycle. And that's true.
And I said, stop, don't say anything else, 'cause
Save
that's
it
the most
for
ADHD
later.
thing I've heard today.
And it has thrown me, so like, I went down like ADHD rabbit hole, got interested in like a new hobby, got my license, got a motorcycle, and then after like 8 months, like sold it, put out down payment for a truck, got like some sort of depression from like wanting to ride my motorcycle again, recently sold a guitar, and now I'm picking up a bike today. And I have no problem explaining all those steps to you guys. All of the questions that everyone else has for me in general about anything I like in life, I feel like I have to explain them so that I can, whether or not to prove to them that I am worthy, which was something brought up earlier, or to prove to myself that I am worthy to do what I want, to like these things, to think the way I think. And I think that is probably, like, in my opinion, the biggest burden of having ADHD. Now I said having, of amming ADHD, is that you're constantly defending yourself.
But Matt's on the teacher is on fire with t-shirts today. I amming ADHD.
I amming
It's
ADHD.
amazing. I don't have ADHD. I amming it.
It is constantly, again, for others or for yourself, whatever it is doing this like verbal karate to get yourself
Totally.
to a place of what feels internally like sanity.
Yes.
Baseline.
Yes, baseline sanity. Speaking of which, thank you for a perfect segue. This has been ADHD Adulting. Trying to help maintain sanity in a world that wishes we just would carry them off the walls, bounce off the walls, and prove everybody right that ADHD is just some sort of insane energy dysregulation, when in fact it's a lot more complicated, right? ADHD Adulting is a lot more complicated, a lot more complex. It involves energy and time management. It involves energy management. Get that word time out of your mouth. If you have energy, you have time. It is about relationships. How do I relate to myself? How do I relate to others? It is about identity. Based on my energy and my ability to relate to others and myself, how do I feel about myself? What do I believe about myself? What do I let others say about myself? And what do I say about myself to others? And how does it all inform a happy, stable, sane ADHD adult who can thrive rather than suffer and struggle forever in perpetuity, feeling like I am the other, I am broken, I am wrong, right? So thank you guys for coming and talking about it. And most importantly, thank you for sharing about this, because hopefully there's a bunch of people watching through that lens who needed to hear this, who didn't have a group to talk about this, who haven't explored this yet, maybe not even be diagnosed yet or ever, right? And who cares? You came here and you're welcome. And thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yay. So whoopee. Done with ADHD Adulting Chat, dogs.